Business meeting. We've got a copy of the agenda on the back for anybody who would like one. If you would, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and our invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dear Lord, we invite your guidance and blessing on our meeting tonight. Please help us not to confuse information for knowledge or knowledge for wisdom. Please help us to find common purpose and make us effective and wise representatives for the citizens of Billings. Help us to edify and to build up one another and all citizens of our community and our state. We thank you for the many blessings that we enjoy, and also remember those who are less fortunate, and pray that you will help us extend a special measure of understanding and grace to those who are cold, hungry, alone, or otherwise struggling tonight and during this holiday season. Amen. If you would, please call the roll.
Councilmember Shaw? Here. Gulick?
Here.
Neese?
Present.
Owen?
Here.
Joy?
Present.
Kennedy?
Here.
Aspenlighter?
Here.
Tidswell?
Here.
Boyette?
Here.
Rupsis?
Here.
Mayor Cole?
Here. Our minutes for the evening, council are from November 25th, 2024. Do we have a motion, Councilmember Boyette?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we approve the minutes for November 24th or 25th, 2024 as read.
Second, I see by Councilmember Rupsis. Any discussion? Seeing none, if in favor of the motion for approval, please say aye. 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 If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Council courtesies this evening. Anybody have any council courtesies? Councilmember Aspenlighter?
It's time for your weekly MSUB women's basketball update. The Yellow Jackets went 2-0 on their West Coast swing. Terwitz, and another one on Friday against Western. So if you haven't went and watched them, they got a great team this year. Coach Wooden's doing a wonderful job with those ladies. A lot of Montana homegrown kids, some Billings homegrown kids. Fun team to watch. Get out and support them. They were also the team of the week this week in the GNAC. So 2-0, first place in the conference.
We've got a good year going this year in Montana. Councilmember Kennedy.
On behalf of the Family Tree Nurturing Center, we held the Festival of Trees last weekend. It was a great turnout. I'd like to thank the mayor and the deputy mayor for being there, and Chris for being there at the Festival of Trees. Great entertainment. A lot of people came, and all the money goes for the prevention of child abuse. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Kennedy, for what you do to prevent child abuse and neglect in our community. We don't have any other courtesies this evening. Okay, we don't have any proclamations, any council reports. Councilmember Rupsis.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to remind council and I guess anybody listening, the annual meeting for the Continuum of Care is tomorrow from noon to 3 at the United Way, and everybody is welcome to join us there.
Thank you very much. Any other council reports? Seeing none, move on to our city administrator report. Chris.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, so about a half dozen things here briefly. So first, as reported in the Gazette over the weekend, we do have 3 officers that are under investigation. They're on administrative leave pending the outcome of that process. Once that process is completed, we will begin the due process relative to any appropriate disciplinary action. So we're coming to a close on those investigations, and we'll move swiftly on what the next steps are in that process. So just wanted to acknowledge to you, to the public, that those, we're obviously aware of that and need to complete those investigations before we can take that next step. Second up is a request that item 1C be moved to next Monday's December 16 agenda. 1C is the A&E contract tied to Amon Park. Not that there are problems there, but there have been a whole series of questions and issues that have been asked. We want to provide a thorough written response to them more than just hours before the meeting, make sure that all of that stuff is in your hands and their hands. And so we've been in communication with A&E and our staff, making sure that that happens smoothly. So I would request that the council move item 1C off the consent agenda to the December 16 meeting. Third up, no ex parte communication today. Fourth, a reminder that our regular business meeting 1 week from tonight is at the library, as we officially kind of pull the plug on some of the technology components at the old City Hall and get ready to move into the new City Hall. So just a reminder, we are at the library community room next Monday for our regular meeting. And I'm already having to buy time. I had told you before, we hoped that January 6th, or we didn't hope, we believe January 6th, we'd be in the new City Hall for our council meeting. I think we should be thinking we're going to be at the library for the month of January and until we get into City Hall for council meetings. Offices are still rolling over there, and the move is taking place, but having the room seamlessly operated, I think we're probably going to be the month of January in the library. And then last, you'll see me sneak out of here. My daughter has her Christmas program tonight, so I'm going to slide out of here and then slide back after that's completed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Council, I'll be looking for a motion on the requested change to our agenda once we get to the consent agenda after we have public comment. So we will open up for public comment on anything on our agenda tonight that does not have a public hearing later. Tonight, the only thing that has a public hearing will be item number 2, the zone review with the county. And we'll have a public hearing on that, but everything else is open season if it's on our agenda tonight. Please come forward and just ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes and tell us your name and address.
So this is agenda. There we go. I think this is agenda 4. It's the capital improvement plan. Probably a little far down the road for this comment, but maybe someone listening might put this in the file, is trying to maybe think about a traffic plan at Will James School. When school gets out there, I mean, they're trying to get on the Grand, you can't go anywhere, you can't go left, you gotta go right. Forces a lot of people through that neighborhood out onto Vermillion Drive, onto Broadwater. And it's just for some of the people that need to be around there during school, it's a challenge. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but you could take a little time to maybe take a look at that and see if you think there's anything. I know you got a light at Reberg. Would you put another light there coming out of Will James? I don't know, maybe they was too close together, but maybe a traffic study could be done there to maybe try to figure out something just to maybe affect maybe that issue. Thanks.
Very good, thank you. Other public comment?
My name is Brian Johnson. I reside at 3108 Saddleback Trail in Ward 4. I'm a partner at Collaborative Design Architects. I'm the Director of Design. I'm here tonight to make public comment on the Amen Rec Center, the Amen Rec Campus, I should say. As I discussed in last month's public statement, the approach, the concept for the public-private partnership at Amen Park was really straightforward. One, reduce the project scope to a courts-only facility for basketball, volleyball, and pickleball. And 2, create city-owned leasable pad sites on the remaining acreage so that community nonprofits could privately fund facilities that they can build and maintain. A win for city administration, the taxpayer, and the Southside community. I'm here to tell you with my team tonight that Collaborative Design Architects remains deeply committed to supporting the project's success no matter what architect is chosen or has been chosen to lead the design team. We're behind you 100%. We believe that the public-private model has tremendous potential to benefit the residents of the Billings South Side, local business, and the broader community. Based on the city's request for proposals, the design of the courts facility and the site is tied together. You can't have one without the other. So I'm here to make sure that everyone understands that. It has to go through. That means finalizing A&E Architect's design contract as your first step toward making this campus concept a reality. If there are aspects of the agreement that cause you concern, then I urge you to negotiate and compromise where needed, but move this design agreement forward so our community and this campus can realize the benefits of one of the largest project donations in Billings history, $6 million from Signal Peak Energy to the Yellowstone Ice Foundation for a state-of-the-art community hockey arena. During the council meeting in November, there was discussion and vote to lower the budget for the courts and site from the RFP stated $20 million to $18.2. I strongly urge you to maintain the original $20 million valuation that the city advertised in the RFP. The court's facility and site will face challenges requiring the architects and engineers to have access to the full project funding. The entire $20 million allocation will be needed to give this project a chance in our construction market. Ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, this is a once-in-a-generation public-private project, and it cannot happen without your approval of the design agreement. Your leadership and support are essential to unlocking this historic opportunity for our community. Together, we can realize a transformational project that will benefit Billings residents, businesses, and future generations, and we can do it with the tax increment funding we currently have in place. That's all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any other public comment?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Nick Pancho. I reside at 2424 Sunrise. I'm the president at Collaborative Design Architects, and I just want to second what Brian had brought forward tonight as the president of our firm. I do want to speak specifically in regards to consent agenda item C, the contract with the A&E for the design of the Amen Recreation Campus. As you know, we're engaged with the Yellowstone Ice Foundation. The development of that project site is exceptionally important to maintain the private project schedule there, and thus moving that contract ahead is critically important from a timeline perspective. The second thing I'd like to address is regular agenda item 4, the CIP. And again, as Brian stated, we believe it's critical that that budget be returned to the $20 million number that was originally stated in the Parks RFP process. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period and move on then to our consent agenda. But before I do, Council, you heard a request from the City Administrator to move that item 1C, which is the contract with A&E Design, to next week's agenda. Councilmember Boyette and Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we move item number 1C to next week at the request of the City Manager.
Councilmember Neese offers the second. Any discussion on the motion? Either you'd like to speak to your motion before we proceed to a vote? Okay, Councilmember Shaw.
I just because we had a couple public comments on it, I just would mention that this is not council delaying this or trying to push it off. It's just there's, I think, some details, is my understanding, that needs to be finalized. And I think you'd rather have us do that in a week than have a really messy discussion trying to amend it on the fly. So just wanted to let the public know that it's not being delayed because of some weird political thing happening behind the scenes. So thanks.
Very good. Thank you for that clarification. I think it's accurate. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote. The motion is just to move that to our next council agenda, which will not be in 2 weeks. It'll be in 1 week because of the Christmas schedule. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes. Now on to a separation. I saw Councilmember Neese and Councilmember Kennedy.
Mayor, I'd like to separate item 1B2.
1B2. Okay.
And I think I'll hold off on the second separation. I think Councilmember Kennedy may do that one, so I'll.
Very good. Thank you.
If he doesn't, please come back to me.
Okay. Councilmember Kennedy, do you have a separation?
Yes, Mayor. I would like to separate item B, J.
Item 1J, memorandum of understanding with Beartooth Resource Conservation and Development area. And I should have commented earlier, Council, I will not be separating consent agenda item 1A1, the board appointments, because we had a change on Friday that was published. Did make 3 changes to that list. If you've got your old list, you should have, a copy was sent to you of the new list, but the Aviation and Transit Board, we're putting James Mariska's name on there. Jim Corson on the Community Development Board, he will be listed as being a low and moderate income area representative. And Tom Greenwood on the Community Development Board has withdrawn his application. Those were the only changes. Councilmember Aspenleiter.
I'd ask to remove agenda item 1P, both 1 and 2, for purposes of recusal.
Items 1P, 1 and 2 for purpose of recusal. Very good. Any other separations? Okay, do we have a motion relating to the items not separated? Councilmember Boyette?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we approve the consent agenda items except for 1B1, 1J, and Councilmember Aspenleiter for P1 and 2.
Very good, thank you. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Gulick. Any discussion? Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. On item 1D.
Item 1E,
as
City
in
County
David?
Special Investigations Unit.
No, 1D is in David, the Fisher's technology print management.
Very good.
Is there, I guess Liz is the person on here, finance, but I don't know if there's anyone else here can speak to that.
Yes, throw your question at me and
Yeah,
we'll
so
go
here's
from
my
there.
question is, it looks like they're going through, which makes sense, they're kind of organizing their printers, kind of consolidating things, which I think is a good idea. But when they talk about the fiscal impacts, what I don't see in here is like, is this saving the city any kind of money? I mean,
So the first sentence in the fiscal effects, I believe from me, said an estimated savings of $30,000 to $50,000 per year.
okay.
In this first year, we've got some upfront costs because we're purchasing equipment and we've got to phase out all of the various other types of printers, but that's the estimate once we get kind of functioning under the new system.
Okay, I apologize for misreading that. I looked over that section
That's
of it.
okay.
It was not in the same page that I was expecting, so. All right, thank you very much. That's all I had.
Very good. Any other discussion on the motion to approve the non-separated items? Okay, so we'll move to a vote on that motion. If in favor, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. First separated item then is item 1B, subparagraph 2, snow plowing contract for K2 Civil. Councilmember Neese, that was your separation. Did you want to start us off?
I will not be making a motion to this to approve, so I separated so I could vote against it.
Okay. Is there a motion one way or another? Councilmember Aspenleiter.
Move to approve agenda item 1B2 as recommended by staff.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Joy. Any discussion? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. So if in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion passes. Councilmember Neese voting in opposition, all other council members voting in favor. Item 1J, Memorandum of Understanding with Beartooth Resource Conservation and Development Area. Councilmember Kennedy, that was your separation. Would you kick us off, please?
Yes, Mayor, I would move that we deny the Memorandum of Understanding with Beartooth Resource Conservation and Development Area.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Neese. Would either of you like to speak to your motion?
Mayor, I would. The city of Billings is 36% at $13,305.66 if we were flush in the city of Billings, and which we're not, and so we've been looking for monies. Beartooth RC&D operates outside of the city of Billings, and I understand economic development. The people inside the city of Billings pays for the dollars that go into BSEDA, Big Sky Economic Development, and so we are paying our fair share I feel. And I think we save ourselves a few dollars because we have every dollar that we spend here needs to go back into the city budget. So that's why I would make the motion that we deny it.
Thank you, Councilmember Neese.
No, I agree with what Councilmember Kennedy said. I think as I read this organization started in '69. There wasn't a lot of economic development organizations at the time here in the city of Billings, and we've developed quite a bit. And we have our TIF districts that are doing a great job in economic development. So I think that, to me, this is just more redundancy that we could save a buck here or there. Thank you.
Further discussion, Councilmember Abschneider.
Thank you, Mayor. For our city administrator, Mr. Kukulski, if you got time between now and when you got to run to tackle this one, we talked a little bit this morning about what are we getting out of this, and out of the memo and the information that was provided, it was really hard to glean what the benefit was. I've been around these RC&Ds in the rural parts of our state, which they're very active and very effective, but they operate in rural areas. And I believe their regulations even preclude them from operating in metropolitan areas, which Billings is considered at this point. So I'm having a hard time understanding what we get out of Beartooth RC&D, and I'm hoping that we can get a little bit of clarity on that.
Mayor and Councilmember Asmalater, absolutely. And on Zoom, we've got some staff here to help us with Beartooth RC&D. I also had an opportunity to talk with Steve Arviskow, leader of Big Sky Economic Development, and Steve clarified for me the separation of what Big Sky does and can do and has access to, as our local economic development agency, but Beartooth RC&D is a regional that has access to federal funding, much of which grants are given to businesses and entities inside the city limits, that Big Sky Economic Development can't and doesn't manage that money, that our regional partner does. So I'm going to stop there. There also was, my suggestion was for them to be able to talk about the value that they bring for businesses and entities in the city, and then answer this question of perceived overlap with Big Sky Economic Development and whether they can do these things for us and that we don't need this partnership. So I would ask that we turn things over to, I think it was Joel who is on the line.
Absolutely. So go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Joel Ferlino. I'm the director of Beartooth RC&D. I have my staff members with me here today. Thank you for giving us a little bit of time today. I'd like to thank those in attendance and the City of Billings for all their support in the past for the economic development endeavors. We do partner quite a bit with Big Sky EDA. This partnership's been in place for quite some time, a couple of decades now. The funding we receive from our local partners is put up against a federal EDA grant that provides funding to support a staff person that provides general technical assistance to the small business community, and all the small businesses in Yellowstone County are part of our 5-county region. We do believe in regional economic development, and that's really the impetus for this federal funding, is you have to be somebody that's providing assistance to multiple counties. We work directly with Steve Arviskow and try and ensure that there are no gaps in the assistance that the small business community receives from us. Some of our programs are strictly just outside of the city of Billings. Some of the loan funds that we have available are only available to rural areas. But we do have some that we partner with Big Sky EDA on, and their finance director has been on our revolving loan fund committee for probably 20 years. So we do refer a lot of people back and forth, businesses back and forth. If one of us is unable to assist them, then we try and get them assistance through the other. But we do have some that is just like the Economic Development District and EDA funding that is separate from Big Sky EDA, as is the food and agriculture is a little bit unique to our organization, and sometimes we're able to help them when they have businesses that are unique to that. But we have a SEDS process, which is a comprehensive economic development strategy. It's a 6 to 12-month process that involves all of our stakeholders in our region, and requires us to be doing public output or public input, takes public input, and to have a committee that meets regularly to try and develop a plan over the next 3 to 5 years, looking at the needs of each community, and a strategic plan that includes looking at different ways to fund different projects. And then that is utilized by our partners at Big Stag for funding sources going forward. We also, I can actually let our finance director talk to you a little bit specifically about the number of loans that we have in Yellowstone County. And that's outlined on this 2024 City of Billings project review, if that was included in your packet. But I'll let Nan talk to you about the 6 loans we have in the City of Billings and the 14 total in Yellowstone County.
Very good. Good. Go ahead. Just ask that you keep it as brief as possible.
Sure thing.
Good evening. I'm Nan Knight. I'm the finance director here at Beartooth RC&D. And the mayor was one of the people that came to the ribbon cutting with the governor earlier this fall for Ultimate Defense Technologies. One thing that I do is I work with business attraction to promote out-of-state businesses into the state of Montana. So part of that is with our revolving loan funds, we are able to provide and funds to businesses inside Billings, not only rural. Yes, I do have pots that are just rural-based, but I also make sure that I keep pots of money available for Billings businesses. As of right now, that is money that is loaned out that they haven't repaid back is $608,000, but leveraging that funds is $3.4 million that has been invested in Billings. But then let's expand that a little bit more. 14 loans that is just outside of Billings city limits. That is almost $6 million that Beartooth has been able to invest into businesses within the region. So that's just a little bit of what we are able to do. We work very closely with BCETA in aligning on projects. Since we aren't a traditional bank, I'm able to think outside the box. And so when a new business is starting up, we are able to help those businesses be able to be bank ready.
Very good. Thank you very much. Councilmember Aspenleiter, that was your question. Did you want to follow up?
Yeah, and I don't want to get into a full debate about value tonight on a consent agenda item. It feels to me like maybe this is something that we should put on a work session after the first of the year, table this discussion and have a real conversation about the value of this partnership. Part of the problem for me is, I'm 12 months in on the council and we haven't seen the Beartooth folks in front of the council about what they're doing or what the value is at all. A lot of the other partners that we work with are here at least once, maybe twice, to update what's going on and what they're doing as a part of their programming, but I haven't seen Beartooth at all. And so my suggestion or my request of the motioner would be to table this and ask the city administrator to put this on a work session after the first of the year, and so we can have a legitimate conversation about what this program does and the value of it without bogging everything down tonight.
Okay, there's a request for, I guess it would be a substitute motion to that effect. Did either of the movements want to make a comment on that? I have to ask our parliamentarian whether that's the right format to do it. But Councilmember Kennedy was your motion, and then Councilmember Owen wanted to comment.
I wouldn't have a problem with putting it on a work session in January. I'm just not ready for it to go forward today.
Okay, thank you.
I would agree with that. I would amend my second to that as well, to see it, instead of a denial, to have it on a work session, because I am prepared to vote against it, but Scott as Councilman Aspinall brings up some good points. We haven't seen them. I just don't know if there's really much value to it at this point.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Councilmember Owen to comment, and that'll give Gina, our parliamentarian, a little bit of time to think about what procedure we should follow now that you've heard that discussion. But let's hear from Councilmember Owen first.
Thank you, Mayor. So if what the movement and second want to do is delay it, that's fine. But I am prepared to vote in support of this tonight because I think we have a misunderstanding about the roles of these organizations. And so I just want to put a couple of thoughts quickly on the record. First of all, they are legally and structurally two different entities. Big Sky Economic Development Authority is a port authority. It has a different legal and fiscal structure than an RC&D. You heard Joel mention that they are an RC&D, that they are part of an economic development district, that they do this SEDS process. These are very real things. These drive state policy as well. They are part of a very rigorous structure that drives economic development in the state. So I think it's important to understand they are not overlapping. They're not just nice partners who work together. They are actually legally and importantly distinct and different entities with access to different tools for economic development in the community. The next is Billings is a leader in this region. We are the hub here, and it is critical to our economic prosperity and our public safety that our rural communities are prosperous and thriving as well. Because if we don't have economic development and economic prosperity and economic opportunity in small surrounding communities, we increase the risk of behavioral health issues, of students dropping out, of substance abuse issues, of crime. And those problems tend to end up here. So if $13,000 is what we need to invest to ensure that our region prospers right along with us and that we don't see an influx of the downside of economic depression, then I think that's money well spent. I'm not going to fight an effort to talk about this more if people feel the need to, but I think having sat on the EDA board, understanding what I do about economic development, these two entities are separate, they're both important, and I do believe they contribute value to the community.
Very good, thank you. So Gina, we have a motion to deny. You've heard the inclination to withdraw that. I'm not sure once the motion has been made, it belongs sort of the body, whether procedurally the movement can just unilaterally withdraw it. So do we have to vote that up and down or entertain it if there were a substitute motion? Oh, okay. And I don't know whether, can the same movement make a substitute motion? On the same topic, I guess so, I don't know.
Thanks, Mayor. Actually, I guess I need to clarify. I was under the impression that you had recognized Councilmember Aspenleiter's motion as a substitute motion?
No, he had not made a motion. He was just taking a poll of the original movement on this topic. And Councilmember Kennedy just indicated he would make a substitute motion to delay this until a future work session. If he can make a substitute motion to his own motion.
Yes, I think that's
okay,
acceptable.
if there's a second. Councilmember Neese, you want to make that second. So that is then the motion that's before us. It is that motion to table. We'll proceed to a vote, but Chris, you wanted to comment on the motion.
I do. I want to support Councilmember Owen's information that she shared with you. That's also what was shared with me in my conversation with Steve Arvesgout today, that in particular, the SEDS process, that we don't have access to funds in Billings, our businesses won't, if we don't have this relationship with the RC&D. That just as she, I think, said better than I, though they are partners from the state and federal funding side of things and access to loans and access to grants, that there is literal access that will be gone because Big Sky Economic Development does not have that. It is the RC&D that's gone through that SED process. That may change nothing about whether you want to look at this at a work session in January or February, but I want you to know that was something that Steve emphasized to me in my conversation with Big Sky Economic Development of the critical separate but partners.
Okay, so the motion again is to delay this until next year. Councilmember Kennedy, you want to speak to his motion, and Councilmember Joy?
I do. You know, Chris, this is just the first of many that we're going to start seeing between now and when we approve of a budget for next year. And what we're going to have to start looking at is how do we thin out our budget and be able to afford the things that are most important to the people in the city of Billings. This was one that was very small dollars, but it's one thing that if we're going to keep everything in the budget, how are we going to pay for everything that the people want? So I'm just letting you know that this is just one of many that we'll have to start looking at, because, and most people get a little squeamish because they don't want to look at where we may be doing some cutting, but it's something that's a reality.
Thank you, Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I guess I have to live my life on a more granular level. In terms of, I will not support the motion to table because I benefit directly from the kinds of work that is done from this. And everybody who goes to the gardeners market at South Park benefits from the work they do. And everyone who goes down South Billings Boulevard and buys some Speedy and Flo's corn benefits from these programs because they help to invest in food and in different small businesses in rural areas that people on the south side benefit from. If you go to the gardeners market, you buy your produce from a guy in Laurel. If you go to the gardeners market, you may be buying watermelons, which I did this summer, from Bighorn County. Those are real people, those are real dollars, and that's my benefit. And it benefits people all over the city when they have access to food that comes from a rural area. So I won't support tabling. Thank you.
Okay, Council, are we ready to vote? Okay, so the motion is the substitute motion to delay this item. If in favor, and if it passes, that resolves the issue. If it fails, we'll go back to the underlying motion, which is for denial, and deal with that. So the substitute motion is before you to delay. If in favor of that motion, please raise your hand. Voting in favor are council members Kennedy, Neese, and Aspenleiter. If voting in opposition, raise your hand. All other members of the council. So the motion fails. It brings us back to the underlying motion to deny. I'll proceed to a vote if there is no further discussion on the motion to deny. Okay, if in favor of the motion to deny, please raise your hand. Voting in favor, council members Aspenleiter, Kennedy, and Neese. If in opposition, please raise your hand. All other members of the council. That motion fails. There's now no motion on the floor. Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you. I'd put a motion on the floor to approve this contract with Big Sky R, C&D. Sorry, Beartooth.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Shaw, second by Councilmember Joy to approve. Any discussion? The only comment I'd make is it's perfectly good discussion. So in the coming year, I'm going to vote in favor of this. We've been in this relationship a long time, and it's not nice just to walk in and demand a divorce. So, but it would be great to hear Beartooth the next year provide sort of a value statement as we think about this some more. It's a great discussion. So, any further discussion? Okay, so the motion is to approve. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Nay. Motion passes. Councilmembers Aspenleiter, Kennedy, and Neese voting in opposition. All other council members voting in favor. That resolves that item 1J. Brings us to item 1M, final plat Clearwater Estates subdivision. Councilmember Aspenleiter was recusing himself on. Maybe you didn't mention that one. Okay, I'm bringing that up. Okay, all right, because I had it circled. Yes, okay, I had it circled. So we'll keep our eye open for you. Yeah. So, okay, and I apologize. I should have caught that earlier. So technically, we approved it, but I'd ask for a vote without Councilmember Aspenleiter's involvement on item 1M, final plat of Clearwater State subdivision. His company was one of the contractors involved, so we all missed that. So apologies. Let's have a separate vote. Is there a motion on item 1M? For the record, Councilmember Neese.
I make a motion to approve 1M, and if you don't mind, Mayor, 1P, 1 and 2, because Councilmember Aspenleiter abstained from all three of those.
Okay, and Councilmember Kennedy indicates a second. Any discussion? Okay, items 1M and both items under 1P. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. All in favor, with the exception of Councilmember Aspenlider, who did not vote. That concludes item 1. Councilmember Boyette?
Mayor, I think we should, one of the things that we want to do every time is acknowledge donations.
Thank you.
The police department was given some money for the SWAT team from the Phillips 66. I just think that's important, $25,000. They're a good partner, and we want to recognize that. As well as the Library Foundation donated money to the public library, but Phillips 66 needs to be recognized for that.
Very good. Thank you for pointing that out. It's an important part of their budget, and it saves our taxpayers a lot of money. So thank you very much. That does conclude then item number 1, brings us to item 2 of our regular agenda. Tony, would you read item number 2?
Item number 2, public hearing for land use contrary to zoning for Yellowstone County. Street trees at the Miller Building, no action necessary.
What's that? Why do we have this on? We have to have a public hearing.
Thank you. This is a type of land use application that's only available to public agencies who are using public land for a project. And for various reasons, they're not fully compliant with the zoning code requirements. In this case, we're talking about the, thank you, the former Miller Building, which will become the Yellowstone County Administration Building, which is where we were officed for over a decade before the city bought the Stillwater Building and the county bought this building. So we're trading buildings. So the renovations for the building have been approved by the county commissioners. It's a large renovation of every floor of the building before they can start moving in, slated for December of next year. Part of the process of renovation is evaluating that investment as a ratio of the current value of the building and property. Since this exceeds 75% of the building value, proportionate compliance with landscaping, street frontage landscaping is required. And this is probably one of the properties on this block that has the most street trees, but it still has less than what's required under our current code. 23 trees are required, and only 14 street trees exist. But as part of the accelerated timeline for this renovation and the fact that there's lots of tree canopy already, the county has applied to go ahead with the renovations without supplying that 9 additional trees. So on this site plan, I basically put a T, a green T, wherever there was an existing street tree. So in the downtown area, street trees are required for 1 for every 25 feet, as compared to other places in the city where it's 1 per 40. The intent of that was to mitigate the heat island effect of almost complete impervious surface downtown. Concrete, asphalt, buildings take up most of the land area. So street trees are really the only green space that most of us experience when we're downtown. Here's the subject property from 4th Avenue North. They have the construction fencing up to kind of limit access to the site right now. The city, the new city forester, along with others, will be doing a walkthrough of the site in the coming 2 weeks to look at the existing trees in the parking lot and the existing street trees to see what kind of maintenance can be done as part of this building project to make sure those trees stay healthy into the future. So right now, there's no leaves on the tree, but during the summer, there's plenty of shade that's provided by these locust trees, linden trees, Canada red cherry trees, as well as an Amur maple that's at the entrance on the parking lot. Quite mature trees. So this is like a Google Street View. This is what it looks like in the summer. Very important shade on the south facade of this building, where you get the most solar gain. Oh, and this is a few years ago when Wyatt and I and Candy and Juliet Spalding planted a tree in an empty tree hole.
That tree's 150 feet tall now.
Not quite, because there's no irrigation on the site, so we had to hand water it to keep it alive. So, and all of those street trees are also not irrigated. So they survive on the rainfall and the runoff that can get into those tree wells. So the public hearing is to gather public comment. You may also provide public comment to the agency that wants to use the land contrary to zoning. You can't approve, deny, or condition this application. It's so that you can gather public comment, and that's all the purpose of the public hearing tonight. And that's it. Be happy to answer any of your questions.
I had a question for you, Nicole. Obviously, we can't approve, we can't deny. Even if we could, our standard of 1 per 25 feet seems virtually impossible to apply here. Our standard is probably too strict in this application. But the county is still 40% off what that standard is. So I sent an email just sort of saying we can comment and we can ask for more trees. And so I was asking the staff whether they want to ask for even a couple more trees if there's an appropriate location for them. I got an email from Wyeth. My interpretation of that was that staff will be talking with the county, but staff is not making that request to this body now to make such a request of the county. Is that the case?
That is accurate. All of the, I believe all of the tree wells that exist do have trees in them right now. So creating a tree well would mean that they'd have to cut into the public sidewalk and dig out the dirt, replace it, make sure that there's so much going on underneath sidewalks downtown. You're not sure if you're going to dig into a vault or into a big gas main or what have you. So we're not asking that at this time. But the walkthrough is intended to make sure that the trees that are there will survive pre and post construction.
Okay. And my request to staff would be if you see a place where we really could benefit from a tree as a community, bring it up with the county. And don't hesitate, because they're a long way from our standards, by this. But anyway, we'll open it. Anything else for Nicole before we open it up for public hearing? Anything else? Councilor Benitez?
Mayor, if the trees are evaluated, which they are, I think they're in the shade and stuff like that to the public, is that something that the TIF district, the downtown TIF district could look at and help fund some of those who want to put more trees downtown?
They do that. And have done that for several commercial renovation projects, help them choose the proper trees, help them financially pay for those improvements.
Okay, so the county could go to the TIF district and if they wanted to get more trees and have a couple of those dug out carefully and put a couple more trees. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. I don't see anything else, so we'll, that's okay. Okay, so we'll open up for public comment. I see that we're privileged to have two of our county commissioners with us. So Commissioner Oslin.
Mr. Mayor and honored members of the council, I did prepare some remarks, not unlike what you have talked about tonight, because we have evaluated the site and it's important to us. And so I'm here to represent the county in this request for land use contrary to zoning, and I'm going to make some brief remarks. We support the efforts to enhance the appearance of our downtown area. No one wants asphalt, sidewalk, and buildings alone. But as mentioned in the planning report to the council, the property has 14 mature trees and significant shrubbery surrounding the property of the future administrative building. We believe the property is well forested with mature trees, providing visual appeal and shade. The trees do not provide significant space for new street plantings to grow and succeed. As construction continues into the spring, we will be reviewing the health and age of the existing shrubs on the property and may consider refreshing or replacing them with new plantings of one type or another. And we do appreciate our neighbors in the city and thank you for your time and consideration. And we will make sure that all of those trees, if they're not healthy, are replaced. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is a public hearing. Any member of the public is welcome to comment. Nothing from Commissioner Morris? No? Anybody else? Anybody else have any public comment on this item? Before we close public comment. Well, no one's coming forward. We'll close the public comment period. Councilmember Boyd, did you indicate something? No. Okay, very good. Then I think our work here is done. Unless there is a request to make any sort of other request to the council or to the commission. Okay, no indication of that. So we'll move ahead with item number 3. Thank you, commissioners. Tony, would you please read item number 3?
Item number 3, tax increment financing assistance from the South Billings Boulevard Urban Renewal District to Service Pro Express Lube, doing business as 5 Pollux Inc., for reimbursement of qualified expenses for improvements made up to a maximum reimbursement of up to $215,170. Sabura Board recommends approval.
Good evening, Council. I'm Dick Zier. I reside at 3039 Golden Acres Drive. I am the consultant to
I'm sorry, excuse me just a second here, Councilor Bassler.
Just before we get started, I'm going to have to recuse myself from this agenda item. We worked on the site plan for this for permitting, so didn't have anything to do with the TIF application, but we worked on the project, so I'm going to recuse myself from conversation and vote.
Very good, thank you. Go ahead, Dick.
Okay, I am the consultant to the Sabura. Tonight, I'm here to present the TIF request for Service Pro Express Lube. This is a new business in the Sabura district. They were eligible for about $386,250, and then at the 16.67% of the project, it was $352,494. Their request for assistance was $300,000. Sabura Board reduced that to $215,170 so that we would have a payback. If you look at the annual tax of increment of $21,517, we wanted to have a payback in 10 years. So their request is $215,170. That is in our capital improvement plan. You can see down there under unspecified development assistance, $1,301,119. So we'd be asking for $215,170 of that. Just a little bit about the project. We have the developer and one of the owners here. I'd like to have them maybe come and tell us a little bit about their project. But before they do that, it's on the corner there of Calhoun and King Avenue East. It's right across the street from Sam's Club and kitty corner from looks like Wendy's there. So it's right in a very good location. It's a business that we don't have on the south side, and I know the question comes up a lot, is this a business that would go there without a TIF assistance? And I'll let Chad or one of them address that, but one of the things that we have going for us with the TIF assistance program is that it might make the decision of where they go. Whether they go into a different part of town, whether they go to a different town, or, you know, it's an incentive. That's what we're using it for. If I put my banker hat on from years ago, if the question comes, would they do it? You know, I mean, if they needed this assistance to get the bank loan, I'd take a harder look at it to see, you know, are we going to get that payback? But this does also help with that decision, I think, as a banker, but it also helps decide where they're going to get located in our city if they're going to come to Billings. So I'd like to have Chad maybe come up, Chad Wagenhals, and tell us a little bit about what they're going to have there. And they've got a very unique scholarship program that I'd like him to explain how that works too. And Trent Kukalski is one of the owners. And I believe, is anybody on Zoom?
I don't think Jason's going to make it tonight. Okay. So first off, I want to tell you about this family. So I don't have any skin in the game. I'm the builder, but
And Chaz, if you would just introduce
Chad
yourself.
Wagenhals, 3132 Western Bluffs Boulevard, Billings, Montana. So anyways, I've got to meet these guys. It's actually the 5 Polacks, so they're all Polish, so they're the 5 Polacks. But Jason's a super, super good guy, a veteran. It's a veteran-owned business. Trent is going to be the manager of this particular one. They have one in Dickinson already that's very successful. And so Trent and Jason have been looking around Billings for a few years now to find their location for where they want to start this. And they want to develop not only this particular area, but as soon as it becomes successful enough that they're able to, they want to do another one here in Billings. So it's going to be a great venture for their family. So one of the questions Dick asked was whether they would have done it anyways. And, you know, I think that when they were looking at properties all around Billings, and Trent can interject for me if he wants to, but they were looking at properties that were, you know, where they thought there was enough traffic, and so they were looking for, you know, parcels that would serve their needs. But once we heard about this Suburra, it definitely incentivized them to look closer at the south side. And so I think it was part of their decision-making process. Whether they would have done it or not, I can't speak to that. But I think it definitely incentivized their process. Trent can tell us a little bit about their scholarship fund and how that works, and just a little bit more about their neat family.
My name is Trent Kukowski, 3826 Avenue E here in Billings, Montana. So I'm part owner of Service Pro Express Loop. We look forward to coming into the town, and yes, I think we do benefit from the TIF program. Would we have gone down there if we didn't get the TIF program money? You know, we looked at a lot of sites along Grand and stuff, and then when we heard about this program, we kind of looked closer down on the south side and saw this program. We thought this fit what we liked, so we chose down here on the south side. And you know, we do have a scholarship program here in Dickinson, North Dakota. If you work consecutive years with us, we will take $1,500 a year. So if you say you work 3 years, $1,500 a year, that's $4,500 to any trade, school, college. We'll make a check out to that. So we also look forward to being part of this community and doing as much as we can to help this community also get involved. So.
Very good. Thank you, Chaz and Trent. Back to you, Dick.
Just in kind of summary then, this is a new business in the Suburra district. This will be the first Service Pro Express Lube in Billings, with plans to expand in Billings over the next 3 to 5 years. It will have 18 to 20 full-time employees. Full-time employees will have full benefits such as health, life, dental care, and vision, along with matching IR benefits. It will have up to 9 fully trained technicians. It's a veteran and family-owned business. That's one of the council's things that said, when are we going to get a family-owned business? Well, here is a family-owned business is asking for funds and help. They have an approval letter from Bavera Bank. The scholarship program, I think, is quite an incentive for kids on that south side to go work there, maybe their sophomore, junior, senior year, then go on to a trade school with some help with $4,500 in their pocket to be used at that trade school. This is a great example of business development in the Suburra district, and I recommend approval of this TIF request.
Thank you, Dick. Council, questions or motions? Councilor Marchetti?
Mayor, I'd make a motion that I move to conditionally approve the tax increment financing assistance from the Sabura to Service Pro Express Lube for reimbursement of qualified expenses for improvements made up to a maximum reimbursement up to $215,170 as recommended by the South Billings Urban Rural and Renewal Association Board.
Good. Second by Councilmember Joy. Would either of you like to speak to your motion? And then Councilmember Shaw and Councilmember Neese.
I would. This is, as we've talked about with the Suburban Board, we want to keep on building up in the area, and the way to do that is to invest in these properties. And I think this is exactly what the TIF is to invest back in properties and get properties to build, especially in this area. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Joy, did you? No? Councilmember Shaw?
Thank you. Dick, can I ask a question about, can you pull up the table that has the costs on it? I'm having a little trouble reading this. I'd just like a little clarity on, yeah, I'll wait till you have it. Yeah, that one, thank you. So I see, all the allowable expenses and then what's allowed under the code. I guess, can you walk us through where on here it says exactly what it is, which amounts for which things?
Yeah, on the far right there, it'll probably go for the,
Just because that total adds up to a lot more than 215. So I just want to understand the breakdown.
It'll be mostly for site development, getting the infrastructure out there, getting electricity and utilities on that property.
So it's going to be,
It'll be that I'd like to use it, the 218,750, so it'll be right in that, take care of that one.
the demolition and site clearance. That's the demolition and site clearance is, okay. That's what I just wanted some clarity on. Thanks.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Neese?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Dick, I had some questions about that same sheet.
Hey, Dick, we got some more questions for you.
So I'm looking at the packet that was sent out to us to review this, and the maximum TIF assistance, you had put in there, I think appropriately, at $180,792, but I see up here you have $352,000. So why the change?
In talking with Wyatt, we include the land acquisition because that is allowed yet to have as part of the percentage. So that's where that came from.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, can I ask that question to Wyeth, please?
Yeah, sure. Wyeth, can you comment on that? And I apologize, Councilmember Neese, where's the 185 number coming from?
180, it's in our packet. If you look at the same chart that is in our packet, you'll notice that the maximum TIF assistance is 187.92.
Oh, I see. This is, yeah. Thank you. Go ahead. Wyeth?
Wyeth, can you address the change of this number that was in our packet now to now suddenly it's changed to 352,000?
So, Mayor, Councilmember Neese, and Mayor and Council. So, I guess let me make sure I'm understanding you. So, what you're seeing in the land acquisition is included initially, and the memo describes pulling that out of the total project cost of the $2 million because we don't.
Right, the memo does, so, yeah, so the memo does do that, but.
So that's addressed. Then there was the amount that the Sabura had initially said that it could be up to the total assistance of 494, but then recommended at their meeting, and the recommendation to you was reduced down to the 215 total of what they wanted to, or what they're recommending to you to be funded. So so that happened, and then that's where we got to the 215,170.
Okay, so as you understand it, the maximum still is 180,792 because it's the project cost less the acquisition amount. Is that correct?
The project, we're subtracting, yeah, the land acquisition out of the total project and then running the calculation.
Okay, you see the 352,000 on that document
Yeah.
on the screen? Yes, in our packet, it's 180,792. When you do the math, it actually shows that our packet was correct where they took the land acquisition out. Okay, so thank you for clarifying that. So that's your understanding, the maximum less land acquisition should be 180,782 per our TIF policy.
Well, and we were discussing this before the meeting. So the TIF, the policy set is, the recommendation is a 1 to 5, but it's not, 1 to 5 isn't required. And there's the issue of 1 to 5 being not 20%, but 16.666. So that's where, yeah, I had a discrepancy in my calculation, thinking that it was matching up at the 215 around 1 to 5, but it's actually less.
Yeah, right, so it's
For
145.
the 180, so
yeah.
if you subtract the 41,000, you go down to like 173, I believe, 173,000 if you were to take that additional out.
173,000 would be the actual.
526, yeah, is what I got if you actually did 16% of that max. But it's up, again, that's a recommended amount, so it's up to both, I mean, the Suburra is making a recommendation, and then you're able to decide either to go with that number or some different number.
Okay, but the Suburra didn't acknowledge that in the memo, and they didn't acknowledge any rationale to go over what the stated policy minimums are, correct?
Can I address that one?
I'm sorry, I was asking Wyeth if he had heard any rationale for that change.
Yeah, Wyeth, go ahead and comment, Wyeth, and then we'll give Dick a chance.
My I mean, in terms of the number, my understanding was that the board, and Dick can speak to this too, was focused on the payback period more so than the 1 to 5 ratio.
Right, that's what I thought so. And Mayor, I have another question for Wyeth, if you don't mind.
Okay, and then we do want to give Dick a chance to comment, but go ahead.
Wyeth, it was talked about whether or not this project, because there's been a lot of investment down on that whole area down there, and so there's a question whether or not would this project go forward with or without the TIF funds. And as the staff looked at this and other projects that are maybe out there, other blight that may be in the area, did the staff feel that this was a project that would probably go forward without these TIF funds?
So Councilmember Neese and Mayor and Council, what I can tell you is that during the discussion at the Suburra board meeting, I brought up that question because it's been a question that's come up with this council multiple times, which is, two things really. One is, would a project move forward even if there wasn't the TIF funds available to potentially fill some sort of gap? And then also also this idea of like prioritization of project types and what would the priorities be. So that was brought up and discussed, but that's as you heard from both the applicant and from Dick, that they were looking at locations around the city, and so they also looked at this area because of TIF, whether they would have built it or not, they were still looking at this because of the TIF program.
Okay.
But yes, that was brought up and we talked about it because we've been hearing from you all multiple times that that's a concern about types of projects and then also project priority.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Dick, if you wanted to comment on any of that discussion you just heard, feel free.
Yeah, when I submitted this to the city, I had not only this one, but the one that Councilman Neese is talking about. So that our plan was try to get it covered in 10 years. That's why I just reaffirmed, but both those were submitted initially. And our recommendation is the 215-170.
Okay. You have a motion before you. Further discussion on the motion. Councilmember Neese?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a substitute motion to the dollar amount instead of the $215,170 to the 16.66% of the project amount less acquisition. I believe Wyeth said it was, Wyeth, did you say 173?
Councilmember Neese, if I can interject, I apologize, but I think Wyeth were referring to 16%. but the correct number at the 16.67 is what you see in the, your packet of 187.92.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And that
Then I'll-
explains
yeah,
the difference.
Okay, I'll use the 180,792 that was in our original packet.
Okay, so that's the substitute motion to change the number from 215 and change to 187.92. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second for discussion.
Second by Councilmember Owen. Do you want to speak to your motion?
I do, thank you, Mayor. This has been discussed often in the council about these TIF funds, and when they're presented to us, we have a pretty clear policy that it's a $5 investment for every $1 of public investment, which it technically is a 6-to-1, not a 5-to-1 that everyone misquotes. And so I think it's, when we look at something like this and they're going to recommend something over the minimum, what is a recommended council policy, we should see a good rationale of why we should do that. But often we don't even see them addressing that in this memo and this policy application. They didn't address it at all. And I think we need to make sure that we hold not just the TIF policies to this piece. We have other funding that needs to happen, but I think we need to make sure we hold the council policies to what people should be following. So I am concerned that we've allowed these policies to get too laxed and not move forward without them even addressing the fact that they're not following our policies. And so I think this project would probably go forward without it. This is a little bit less than what they're asking. It's still a very good amount for this organization on a very prime piece of property in a very busy area. And so I think they'll do well with this going forward.
Very good. Councilor Owen, did you want to speak to your second?
No, Mayor, I don't want to speak to the second per se. I was hoping to ask a question before the substitute motion was made, because Wyeth, I'm sorry if I'm slow, but I am not tracking the numbers that we have there. So if you said land acquisition was taken out or added in, I'm not, if I add those numbers in plans, permit, acquisition, demolition, utilities, and landscape, that gets me to 1.4. So how did we jump from that total to the total project cost?
Councilmember Owen and Mayor and Council, I'll have to go back and look at how that was calculated, but the total, there was a $2 million total cost with everything added together. And yeah, I'd have to go back and look at what I have in the present or in the memo to double check that. But there was a total cost that was $2 million. And maybe it's because the attachment that the applicant provided doesn't match up with some of what was provided, but I'd have to double check. But it's more than, the land acquisition pulled out still, we were still in that 1 million something. Please help me out.
Come on, Andy, what do you got?
Mayor and council, I think I have the answer, and I'll give Dick a second to confirm if I'm right. If you look at your packet, the agenda item that was attached, it is the, what is it called? The ESPER recommendation and express loop application. That has a detailed list of expenditures included in it, and that must be page 3 and 4. That totals the $2,114,541 you see up there in bold. I believe that the difference, which is about $620,000, are expenses that don't fit in those TIF categories, and so they're not presented in the 1.493. So the total project cost, including land acquisition, is 2.114 per the application.
So 1.4 million is the amount against which we should be calculating the incentive, correct?
I don't think that's correct.
It has the word acquisition, so that's debatable.
That's my concern is,
Total project cost list.
But theoretically, it might be
so
considered.
we all agree that land acquisition is 1.03 million, right?
Correct.
And that land acquisition is eligible. Okay, so what's the difference between 1.4 and 2.1?
It's a private investment total of that, $1,084,541. And so the 215,170 is the private investment is 5.04 times the public investment. The public investment.
But Dick, I think what Councilmember Neese is saying is that's not the appropriate calculation, correct?
if you take the 2,114,541 minus the 1,030,000, it comes to 1,084,541.
And where are you pointing that to on the screen?
I don't know, maybe that sheet didn't get included into this presentation, but I sent both of them to this one. So at one point, it was sent, but if you just take that, it's the total project cost is 2,114,541 minus the land acquisition, leaves a private investment without the land of $1,084,541, and we're asking for $215,170. The $1,084,541 is 5.04 times that 215,000. So it fits into that. Also fits into the 16.67%. You know, there's a lot of room there if you put in the land acquisition. And that's why I sent it both ways, because I didn't know how you were going to include whether the land acquisition was going to be part of it or not.
Well, what's your recommendation?
My recommendation is we include the land acquisition and get the 2 million, and then we cut it down even more so we'd pay back in 10 years.
And I apologize, Dick, I didn't mean to cut you off. What is the staff recommendation? Include land acquisition or not?
Councilmember Owen and Mayor and Council, we have been consistently not including the land acquisition in any of the 3 urban renewal district requests basically throughout the board for a while. We've been communicating with all 3 districts about that because people acquire land yesterday and they acquire land 40 years ago. So we've been pulling that out, and I really have made an effort in the memos to show that, to say, here's total, but if you take out land, here's that other number.
So
all
then,
this other stuff aside, obviously, I made some other mistakes, but we don't do that.
okay, so then your recommendation is that we calculate increment against $1,084,541.
Correct.
Which would be a cap of $180,000 in change.
Based on the 6-to-1.
Which is what Councilmember Neese is recommending.
The 16.66.
Correct? That's Councilmember Neese's amendment.
That was
Okay.
the motion, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. And that is the substitute motion that is before you. Councilmember Rupsis, Councilmember Shaw.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and support this, but Wyatt, just to be clear, our TIF policy does not say a 5-to-1, not including land policy. So if we should, if we're going to make that our policy, we should probably just bring a resolution to update that or something, because there's no mention of, all it says is greater than or equal to $5 private investment for $1 public investment. Does not mention absent land acquisition at all. So I'm going to go ahead and support this motion, but let's bring that forward and just make that clear so that, we don't have to have this conversation 8 more times over the next couple of years.
Councilmember Rupsis, Mayor and Council, we actually need to bring, and it's just been a capacity issue, bring several amendments to you, and which we talked about many months ago. So yeah, that is one of them, is to clarify that and the percentage. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Councilor Shaw, but on that point, I'm just going to insert a comment. I've always advocated for getting rid of acquisition costs, but I've also always advocated for including an exception if somebody can show a reason why. Contaminated property, something like that, for the exceptional situation. But Councilmember Shaw?
Yes, I just wanted to put on the record that our TIF policy is actually not clear that it's this 16.6%. It says greater than $5 to $1 ratio. Council has, again, the same thing we debate every time. We should just settle it so that it's not up for discussion each time. But I just want to make the point that this is a very conservative estimate, and that's what the substitute motion is proposing. But if we take it to a 1 to 5, a 20% ratio, that gets us pretty close to the original number. So
I would disagree with the math that 5 to 1 is 16.67%, but agree it needs to be super clear.
it's not clear in the way it's written, is all I'm saying.
As indicated by our discussion, right? Okay, was there any other discussion before we proceed to a vote on the substitute motion? Don't see any. So again, the substitute motion is to approve the TIF proposal, but with the lower $180,000, 792 amount. If in favor of the substitute motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Voting in opposition, Councilmember Kennedy. I believe all other council members voting in favor, so the motion, and also Councilmember Aspliter did not participate in the vote. Thank you for clarifying that. So the motion, substitute motion passes at the $180,000 number. Thank you very much. That concludes item number 3, bringing us to item number 4. Tony, would you read item number 4, please?
Resolution approving the FY 2026, FY 2030 capital improvement plan. Staff recommends approval.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I have before you the FY 26 to 30 CIP. It was it 2? Well, it could have been 2 weeks ago. A few weeks ago, we were here at a work session discussing this. You gave some direction at that meeting. Those adjustments are reflected in what's before you. So the current proposed CIP for all 5 years is $551,667,558. The only adjustment that's been made from the prior CIP was specific to these projects in the South TIF District and potentially expanded South TIF District. At that meeting, the direction was the total for the Amon Park Rec campus would be $18.2 million. Again, I'll remind you, there is presently in this fiscal year $1 million budgeted, so that would change that FY26 amount to 17.2. The direction as well was to leave the turf field in there at 1.8, and then a total of 10 million for South Park Pool, for a total of these 3 projects at 30 million. That again is in what is before you. If it is council's desire to keep this, you can adopt as presented. I know there are discussions about changing this, and staff's prepared to talk about that. I'm sure the TIF district is here, or the SPRA is here as well to talk about that. That's all I have. That's not a repeat of what we've done before, but maybe for the benefit of some of the public, I'll cruise through these last couple. Some of the major projects in FY26 include airport continued improvements at the airport, this area being largely in the baggage claim and ticketing areas. There's quite a bit in there associated with the community change grant, which if we are successful, these improvements would happen. If we are not successful in that grant, these improvements would not happen. Obviously, we talked about the rec center and South Park Pool, and then the major public works project outside of some annual projects that you've heard about would be the Rimrock Road improvements from 54th to 62nd. The entire CIP is, both the current adopted one as well as the proposed one is available for the public on billingsmt.gov/CIP. And once we have a proposed CIP here, we will update the interactive map that has those projects mapped for the public as well. I guess this is actually a repeat from the work session, so I don't need direction from you. Would encourage you to consider adoption. And I think that's all I have. Again, I do have all the project pages if we need to go through that, but Mayor, I'll turn it over to you and council.
Okay, thank you very much. There's no public hearing on this, so Councilmember Aspliter, you had caught my attention, Councilmember Shaw.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this question for our Public Works Director, Ms. Melling. Trying to hide in the back and answer emails. Yeah. So now we're really going to work. So my question is around transportation alternative dollars as it, coming down through MDT. And historically what we've done, I guess, to me is not necessarily where I'm going with the question, but where are we going in the future? I'm concerned about allocating those dollars to future trail projects, and I'd prefer to see those fund or ramp up our execution of the Safe Routes to School. Is that a possibility? And if we drove that direction, how would we implement that in the CIP that you've presented for Safe Routes to School?
So is it a possibility? Yes. TA funds do have some criteria. Essentially, they're helping with transportation alternatives, so it's not a super tight criteria. In the Safe Routes to School studies, we have a lot of things like pedestrian crossings, sidewalks, bike facilities, that sort of thing. So all of those would fall in those criteria that's set aside for that TA program. So yes, I think it's possible. I think what we have to do is just look at the funding available, compare it with what we are doing in the CIP. Right now, we're using gas tax to be able to move those Safe Routes to School projects forward. We did get a Safe Streets for All grant, which is helping as well. But right now, I think in the CIP, we're $700,000 a year to implement that Safe Routes to School project. That TA money could be used in addition or in lieu of.
Councilor Asplund, you want to follow up?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Melling, thanks. I would propose adding that to work through those Safe Routes to School improvements at a faster clip. Understanding that that's not 1.8 million this year, but over the span of the 2 years that we're working through that, or 3 years, that we add our TA appropriation to that. Do you have a sense of what we have access to in TA funds now and what our allocation for that is going forward? Do you have a sense of that, or is that a Mr. Friday question?
I think we do have those exact numbers in there. Wyeth might have them off the top of his head. I think we're at 1.4 million.
I mean, we got a larger amount this year, but that's not how it's Councilmember Aspenlater, Mayor and Council, the amount, we got an increased amount in the current cycle, but our understanding is that our normal, what we should be expecting is around between 500,000 and 700,000 a year going forward. Like that was, MDT has been slow, and sometimes they end up commingling like a 2 cycle into 1. So that's partly why we've seen some higher numbers. That's partly with the Stagecoach Trail why we saw such a large number. But but our expectation is 500,000 to 700.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, that's one of the things I guess I would put up to the council for suggestion and to address in this CIP is taking the allocation that we have for this fiscal year and allocating those dollars going forward to address our Safe Routes to School deficiencies until we work through that, and then revisit what we're going to do with those TA funds. But until we work through those the deficiencies that we've identified in our own planning studies, I think we should be allocating those dollars to Safe Routes to School to work through that deficit in our community. Do you want me to make that as a motion? I'll make that as a motion.
I'll second.
Well, okay, it's going to have to be really a little more specific than the way it was discussed generally.
I'll hold for discussion until I make a motion.
Okay, thanks. Councilor Shaw and Councilor Bernice.
I'd like to make an underlying motion for approval, and then we can have anything added as amendments. So I move to approve a resolution approving the FY 2026 to FY 2030 capital improvement plan as recommended by staff.
Okay, motion made and second by Councilor Shaw and Councilor Owen to approve the CIP consistent with the staff recommendation. Either of you want to speak to your motion?
Well, I would actually also like to offer an amendment on the Espera piece when we get to that, but I'll let Scott take his first.
Okay, Councilor Asplund.
So I'll move to amend the CIP to include the TA dollars available in this fiscal year and allocate them to the Safe Routes to School program on top of the existing allocation in the CIP today.
Okay, and I'm going to ask the staff to comment now. Let's, if we've got a second.
You got a second.
Second by Councilmember Kennedy. Sure, Councilmember Ripsis.
If I could just ask Councilmember Aspenleiter, there are $0 allocated in FY26 CIP for Transportation Alternative Program funds. So I'm just looking to understand what it is you're trying to reallocate.
probably should make that full screen.
Councilmember Asplund, did you want to clarify it?
And let me redirect that to the staff. My understanding is that we have received our allocation for this year, but we're not allocating that money, and it's currently pooling. Is that accurate, Wyeth?
Councilmember Aspenlighter, Mayor and Council. So no, we're actually, what's happened is we've got the amount that was designated that went to the Stagecoach Trail has happened. We haven't actually completed the TA process for the current cycle. So we haven't gone through the process even to determine where those funds are. We don't have those funds yet. So I guess that's the part, that's why I was going to ask about 26 versus the future and understanding what you're saying, because that has to actually come and be recommended for the amount we get. We actually have to also, since it's MPO funds, we have to include the county in those discussions as well in terms of projects. So there's some mechanics that haven't happened.
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion, but I think the intent is that we're having that conversation about safe routes to school going forward once we receive our allocation for those TA dollars.
Okay, thank you. The motion and second have been withdrawn. Back to Councilmember Shaw. You said you had something?
Yes, I'd like to review that ESPRA funding slide. So based on the public comment we've heard and my understanding of what it's going to take to actually do the infrastructure, build the court facility, this 18.2 is not going to cut it. So I would make an amendment to, for the time being, eliminate the Amon Park turf field and move that money into the Amon Park Rec Center and infrastructure pool. So we're at 20 million there, 10 million for the South Park pool.
Second, Councilmember Boyette. Did you want to speak to your proposed amendment? Second, I also heard Councilmember Joy.
Yeah, I would. The piece I would add is that I think not saying no to the addition of the turf field, because I do like the idea of kind of touching the 3 different areas of sports with courts, a pool, and then a turf field, pushing it out. But I also think it's worth having a conversation with the Amon Park Development Council about fundraising a piece of this so that it's not all coming from the TIF. I think we can maybe come up with a reasonable amount, give them a target for a couple of years. That would be my goal, and that's part of my idea in making this motion, is that it's not turning away from that project, but pushing it out a little bit and putting a little more responsibility on the users to raise a little bit of that money, just as we're expecting the hockey to do for their new hockey rink. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess the bottom line is I want the Amon Park Rec Center not to fail. I want it to succeed. And the surest way we can do it is not hopefully give it enough money. The turf field, kids have been playing on the grass for a million years. That's something we could do later down the road. But I think the $20 million and the $10 million, that would be inadequate. That'll give us a really good start, and hopefully we won't fail.
Very good. Councilor Joy, and then Councilor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I won't repeat what's already been said. The logic is very clear to me. If we expect matching grants or matching funds from entities that would come forward for affordable housing, we can expect sports to come up with matches. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Joan.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to express a concern, and I guess I would invite Councilmember Shaw or anybody else to respond to it, because turf field, no turf field, that is immaterial to me. If people want to fundraise for it, great. If they can't, Spur can figure that out. That's not my concern. My concern is this. I, like Councilmember Boyette, don't want to see this project fail. But what I don't want to see fail is the entire footprint. The courts are an important piece of that, but they're not the only piece of that. We are talking about a proposal here where the city serves as a landlord, creating pad sites that bring in partners like ICE, like others, to invest. And what's left out of this is the entirety of the infrastructure. We're only building 2/3 of the infrastructure. That whole piece, if you think about this footprint as an L, that whole upper piece, parking, water, sewer, that's not included in whether it's 18.2 or 20 million or wherever we end up. There's a big piece of this footprint that isn't being addressed, and we're sort of cutting our margins to the point that we don't have any wiggle room. And so my concern is there's no extra dollars other than private dollars. We have a piece of the infrastructure that is left undeveloped. It's as much as I don't want to see the rec center fail, I really don't want to see South Park Pool fail. I'm concerned that what's driving us from 18.2 to 20 is the courts building, which is important and valuable. But to me, what is more critical is that South Park Pool gets done, that we have the ability to tolerate some risk around South Park Pool, and that we really build the infrastructure that allows all of the sports participants to come in and invest in their pieces of it. So if any council member has a thought to that, I'd love to hear a little debate around that, because we don't have dollars beyond this. And I just think we need to be thoughtful about what our role is in development.
Very good. I'm going to recognize Councilor Aspenlighter and ask staff to clarify the definition of Avon Park Rec Center when Councilor Aspenlighter's done. Does that mean the courts facility, or does that mean the full campus? Because it was my understanding it could be the full campus. But Councilor Aspenlighter and Councilor Shaw, you had your hand up too.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Andy, this is where I'm going to ask you to pull up the spreadsheet. So as Andy's pulling that up, I'll try to speak to this, and then hopefully we can kind of work through this a little bit live with the forecast and projections. I would be hesitant to try to build out the infrastructure on the north end without having a likely tenant up there. In building out the infrastructure, then we put that tenant in a box, so to speak, without them at the table to say, hey, I want the building configured here, I want it located on this site, and I want the parking configured this way. You know, if we do it now, we're going to have an architect that may not work on the building that could come in the future, laying out a site and putting whatever new tenant in a box. I think it's more pertinent to have the conversation around, is the money there in 2 years, 3 years, to spend that $2 million, even if it's over 2 fiscal years, if it's split funded over 2 fiscal years, is the money there in the projections based on the forecast that we have? So that's what I asked Andy to do earlier today, to be prepared for this conversation. And, you know, in a perfect world, we would have had this conversation the first time we went through this process, instead of trying to do it live tonight. But let's try to look at the numbers. So Andy, if we lay this in as the motion was put forward, so the 1.8 for the turf field is out for now. Can you show us what the projection is in 27, 28, and 29 as far as cash flow and increment, and what your assumed growth rate is? Not accounting for, like, you don't have a forecast on what new development is coming in. You're forecasting based on what's there now, correct?
Yep, so Mayor, Councilmember Owen, Aspenlighter, I don't know who started with, all of you. So you've seen this for the downtown district. We maintain these same sort of projections for all 3 of our districts. In the South TIF district, we always start with what's our approximate cash on hand beginning of the fiscal year, and then what do we know to be true, which is our tax revenue estimates, state entitlement share that goes directly to the TIF district, and an estimation on interest to arrive at total revenue. When looking forward here, this district has seen positive growth year over year, so we do make a projection here. In this case, it's 2% growth in tax revenue, which is very conservative for this district, but that is something different compared to the downtown one you've seen. Then we know what we would make, again, assumptions or costs we know are true for city cost allocation, the SBIR admin amount, as well as our debt service payments that we know. And then, you know, in fiscal '25, we paid off the evidence facility, and we know we've got some other projects in here to arrive at ending cash balance, which then flows up to the top for the beginning for the next year. So just as kind of an understanding of how this works. So right now we have a projection of $28 million in bond proceeds, then $30 million in expenditures related to those three projects, and then adding the debt service of $2.5 million. These projections currently include, future undeveloped street phases or undeveloped street improvements, as well as some just anticipated unknowns, kind of placeholders for future years. The idea there being we're not gonna do these projects and do nothing. So what do we think is going to happen? And you see, we get down to 500,000. So could you have the discussion, or could you do what you're talking about? Take the 30 million and take this 1.8, put it up there, and still have funds? Yes, but you're gonna move some of these monies around. Maybe not do these projects here. You've got what, 3 million and some change there between those four cells. So yes, you can probably anticipate there's funding available for that in the future.
Question, back, this is your line, so
Yeah.
Councilor Epstein.
So to follow up on that, roughly using the same numbers that are being used in the development of this pad site at $7.50 a square foot for site development, and that's paving, bringing in water sewer services, stormwater management, and putting asphalt, curb gutter, and landscape in. That's at $7.50 a square foot. That's what's being used, and that feels a little light. Ed's nodding his head because he lives in this world. That feels a little light to me even. But we also have seen on large-scale projects, when we're talking about tens of acres, not acre projects, that does come in on those on that level, and I've seen that on projects that I'm working on currently. So let's assume that 750 is right. That puts us right in the range of $2.5 million needed if we're going to build. If we have somebody come forward and they need that pad site developed. So conservatively, that's $2.5 million, roughly. So as Andy's saying, I mean, the easy answer is, yeah, we don't do any projects and we don't expend in 26, 27 the full $1 million set aside for development assistance. I don't think that's real. I mean, we're going to have projects. We're going to encourage economic development, and I wouldn't advocate for that either. It does have us have a conversation about unimproved streets and how fast and when we want to do those next projects. But on the top, the thing that I would point out is how fast this TIF rebounds based on the projections. And so as we do this in 27, 28 with those expenditures, yes, and some things coming off the books, we do dip down, but look how fast we rebound up. So as we're looking at split funding, we may have and likely will have the ability from a cash flow standpoint, not outstanding our capacity to bond based on the revenue and the cash on hand, correct? The ability to tackle that $2 million to $2.5 million or a large portion of that in the outer fiscal years. So fiscal 27 is 26 and fiscal 28 is calendar 27. I don't think what we're doing precludes us from having somebody come in the future and us coming really close to paying cash based on these conservative estimates. And so I understand and appreciate your question, and I want to be mindful of that too, but I think that also puts some onus on the Aspero board to make sure that, hey, if there is a likelihood of a conversation coming, that we're being mindful of what we're allocating in other areas. And it makes us be mindful about what we're doing with that unimproved streets. I would argue that putting money into things that are going to generate economic activity probably is better suited for those TIF dollars than doing streets in the years that we're projecting when we can do those street projects in 29, 30, and 31. So I think we do have flexibility, and I don't think we're hemmed in to the point that we are in the downtown TIF by any stretch of the imagination. I think there is capacity So I hear your concern. I'm not as concerned, I guess, is how I would put it, based on the numbers and how this forecast looks as it's shown here.
Okay, very good. Okay.
I just wanted to ask an explanatory question. Andy, you have projected here the unspecified development assistance out to fiscal year 27, and then it stops. Is that because you think it's going to, do we have it allocated to something else, or did you just not project out that far?
Yeah, we didn't project that out that far.
But, I mean, to Councilmember Aspenleiter's point, you anticipate, unless it gets allocated by council, that continues to exist.
I would expect there's probably some. That number typically fluctuates, though, and the reality, at least my opinion, is, you know, we've got $1 million placeholder in there. That depends on what comes forward. You know, tonight, I think you took 180,000 out of this one, and, you know, are they going to hit?
No,
I understand.
isn't it already there?
Is it in there? I was looking at it. Oh, yeah, there it is. Sure,
Yeah.
216. Okay. Yep. So, I mean, some of these projects, you know, are they going to spend $1 million? Maybe not. In my opinion, probably not year over year. But, you know, it depends what comes forward to you. But yes, you're correct. This does show nothing here in 28 and beyond for development projects. But again, you also start to rebound there as well.
Okay, so I guess I would just say, Mayor, that I think we really have to weigh risk carefully tonight, because we are assuming that the increment continues to increase, which I think is a reasonable assumption. We are assuming funds available. I think Councilmember Aspenleiter makes a good point that developers will want to develop their sites. So while we would ordinarily say, once we're there, let's just move all the dirt, I concede that point. But we have no wiggle room on cost overages on the rec center and no wiggle room on cost overages on South Park. And I think we have to be very aggressive in our contracts. I know many of us have looked and sent comments on the rec center contract, because there's just not, we are right at capacity. And I think each council member should think about our, you know, what our contingency plans are when somebody comes in and says, gosh, we started working on South Park Pool and it turns out there's $1 million more problems than we knew. So that's all I will share.
Okay, just a reminder, what's before us is the proposed amendment to move or increase the 18.2 on the Amen Rec Center line item to 20, and to eliminate, for now at least, the Amen turf field. So that's the proposed amendment that's before us. Councilmember Kennedy and Councilmember Joy, Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. I wouldn't have a problem going to the 20 and looking at the future for the 1.8. I do have a problem with any change orders coming up once the project is going forward. The other piece that I have a real problem with is we talked about a public-private partnership. And the public-private partnership would be that this would be developed by the city and leased out to a private partner. I would expect that with the rec center. If the city needs more basketball courts or whatever, that would be leased back to the city. That's the way we've talked about it all, so it needs to happen that way. The last thing is, I'm willing to go along with South Park Pool. I think the 10 million is a good number. The one thing with the 10 million, it needs to be design build. We have spent dollar after dollar after dollar on drawings and everything else, and change orders on drawings, that we need to go out for a proposal and say, we have 10 million, just like Councilwoman Owen has said. This is what we have. Give us your best plan. And that's what you have to live with. And so if there's unforeseen problems or whatever, that's what they're bidding on. So that's the way. What we've been doing is more changeovers, spending more money, and trying to dig up more dollars for all of these projects. Now it's time we come back and we say, hey, if you want the project and you want to bid on it, then you've got to keep it within reason. And I would like South Park Pool to be, to go out to bid as a design build. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll just comment that we do want to stay to the motion itself, which is the CIP.
I hate to say that, but because I wouldn't have.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Who had I recognized? Councilmember Joy, Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I really think the discussion is important. I think part of our discussion right now would probably be more appropriate for the committee, the Budget and Finance Committee. We're just, we have a motion for a CIP. A CIP is a planning document, even though, you know, there's a lot of drawing on the CIP for the budget. The budget is its own document, excuse me. The budget is its own document, so we're not really deciding change orders right now. We're on a planning document, and I think we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm generally acceptable to the amendment here, but I do have a question because the turf fields are important to me, and I think they're important to the community down there. So, and as I understand here, back by fiscal year 29, they're going to start recovering fiscal year 30. I guess my ask would be to see those added back in instead of just taken out, move it to the fiscal year 30, giving them time to start raising funds. Maybe the amount isn't 1.8 million. Of course, by that time, half may be 1.8 million. So maybe that would be the ask to keep that in the keep that in mind, and so that we can do that. So I guess I don't know if I can amend an amendment.
Just vote on it.
Okay, unless the motion amendment or the people making the motion want to include that. So thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other comment before we proceed to vote on the proposed amendment? Andy?
If I may, Mayor, I would like to point out one thing, and Dick reminded me of it, but I wanted to highlight it because I think it's germane to the point, as well as your discussion at the work session. At the work session, your direction was that the total project cost, regardless of years, really is the way I interpret it, was $30 million. So the Amen Park campus was to be 18.2, inclusive of the $1 million that is budgeted this year. This projection here, as you see, has 18.2 in addition to the $1 million that's there. And the reason that they don't match up is we maintain this internally for our projections, and it hasn't been adjusted to reflect the CIP. I just want to point that out, that this would be $1 million less than what is projected here. So Dick had asked me to remind you as well. His encouragement is that it is total of the inclusive of this one plus these two, or that 20. So it'd be a total of 21, but that is contrary to what you directed a couple weeks ago, as well as the motion before you. I just want to make sure that's clear before you're voting on this.
Very good. That was my understanding, but let's go with the other Councilmember Aspliner.
So that was my directive, so I'll eat it at this point, and ask us to reverse course. I think the $1 million that's in this fiscal year's budget would be on top of the 30 million in that package. So it's a total of 31 million in that Amen campus as it's constituted now, would be my suggestion to the motioners.
Yeah, to be clear, the amendment I made was specifically for those bonded dollars of 20 million for the campus, 10 million for the pool. So if that's clear.
So, okay, no disagreement. The motion as proposed is still before you. The only comment I would make is I agree that turf is still important. Development of the northern parcel is still important, and we'll just need to come back. But I'd say we shouldn't deal with those in the abstract. If there are private dollars out there to drive any of those projects forward, the golden rule, he who has the gold needs to make the rules. We really need to respond accordingly, and we want to incentivize private donors for those projects, as well as many other out there in the community now. Any other discussion? Don't see any. So again, the motion before you is Councilmember Shaw's amendment to change the 1.8 move the $1.8 million for turf to the Ammon Park line item. So it reads a full $20 million, not including the $1 million that's already in the budget for design. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. That is only the amendment, so now you have before you the amended underlying motion. Any other discussion? Councilmember Bernice.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to amend the South TIF projects to add back in the $1.8 million in fiscal year 29.
So the motion is to add the 1.8 for turf in fiscal year 29. Second by Councilmember Kennedy. Discussion, either of you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, Mayor, I think that when we look at Amen Park and what they do and how much they bring into that whole area and the ability to host tournaments on those turf fields, it really brings value to that whole area. So I think the sooner we get another turf field in there, I think the more we're going to see in better tournaments, lighting, things like that, where we can have more type of games, night games. So I think this is just going to, make this whole area much better. So sooner we get it done, I think the better. Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Kennedy, do you want to speak to your second? Councilmember Shaw?
Just if it's a place saver for fiscal year 29, it could come up before then. At least we know it's there.
Okay. Further discussion, Councilmember Shaw?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to have it as a place saver. I just want to put on the record that while that 1.8 is what we think the total project costs would be, I do think it's important that we set some expectation for private development, or for private investment, which is a different conversation, but I just don't want to set the expectation that we're going to fully fund this, at least from my perspective, in 29 at 1.8.
Very good. Any further discussion? The only thing I'll comment on that is that if only because of inflation, they'll need more than 1.8 at that point, and that becomes a handy portion for private contribution potentially. Ready to vote, or further, Councilmember Asplmeyer?
Just a comment to the SBIR board guys that are here. I mean, if we put this in as a placeholder, I think the intent is that you guys look to budget it somewhere in the future as you're working projects and try to keep that in mind as we're going through budgets. So I just ask you guys to be mindful of making sure that we're working towards this in some capacity in the 5-year plan as possible.
Councilmember Kenny?
I would just like to say that the Amen Park Association brings in $250,000 a year. So they are going to be there and ready for that as quickly as the match money is ready.
Very good. Move on to the vote then. The vote is to add the $1.8 million for turf in fiscal year 29. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion also passes unanimously. Back to the now twice amended underlying motion for approval. Any further discussion, Councilmember Owen?
Mayor, while we are on the topic of the rec center, I hate to do a ticky-tack amendment, but I think this is important because I think we've got a misstatement in the project description, and I don't know how important that is. But I think if we're looking here at page 87, which is where the project description for the Amen Park Rec Center is included, there's a line in here that says the operating budget impact, TBID Tourism Business and Improvement District to cover operating expenses. That's not true. First of all, they're covering, the hope is that they will cover any deficit in operating expenses, but also they have not voted on this new proposal yet. My understanding is that's a January vote, but regardless, I think this language needs to be clear as a part of our planning document that the city is partnering with the TBID to address deficits in operating expenses, but we certainly shouldn't set forth a planning expectation that that the T-bid will cover everything. They will at best cover the deficit, but have not yet voted. So I would make a motion to amend this to say the city projects that the T-bid will partner to cover deficits and operating expenses.
Very good. Did you get the exact language there, Tony?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second? Second by Councilmember Ripsis. Any further discussion on the motion before we vote? Councilor Bernice?
Thank you, Mayor. I probably won't support the motion because I believe it leads everyone to believe that they're going to pass that. I don't know that they will, and so I think it should be left blank, if anything. So I won't support the motion, but I do think it needs to be amended to be at least removed, saying they're not doing it. Maybe just saying we're approaching them, but that's it. We have no. I have no inclination that they're going to vote in favor of this because they were only supporting the larger rec center, not a piecemeal of it.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Boyette?
Dick, have you had any conversations with the T-bid? Or anyone had a conversation with the T-bid?
Yes, I've had numerous conversations with them, and they are planning on helping with this project. They put what was the tax, $2 or $4? An additional $2. So they got 4 then, though? Yes. They have $4 a night total towards helping with this project, and they're 100% behind it. Evan told me that him and another chamber person was going to be on tonight. Are they on? Or? Anyway, yes, I've had many conversations, and they are planning on doing that. They just don't know the amount and stuff, so. And they were waiting to get this vote to see where we're at.
Thank you. Councilor Rapslar?
My understanding from just the one design committee meeting that we sat in on was as they're developing the pro forma out for this facility and projecting what operational costs were, that was the piece that the T-bid was really waiting for to see what that number was, and then they could make a formal motion on what is an actual number for the deficit. Yes.
I can't speak for the T-bid, but my son is a board member of the T-bid. I can assure you that they are going to come to this ballpark, and they're going to take care of the needs that we need to make this thing successful. John Brewer, my next door neighbor. So do not think you're going to be disappointed with what's going to happen from the T-bid.
Very good. Thank you. For everybody who couldn't hear that on TV land, that was Suburban Board Member Ron Murai saying based on, or Jeff Murai, he also, it's his information that T-bid is on board with covering the deficit. So, very good. We'll move on to vote. Councilmember Owens' proposed amendment. You heard the language. If in favor of that proposed amendment, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously. Now to the third three-time amended underlying motion. Further discussion. Councilmember Braun.
Okay, one more and then I'll be done. I've mentioned this before. It is a frustration of mine that all of a sudden the Expo Drive Bridge project has been dropped from the CIP. I don't think we should lose sight of that project. I believe where it belongs is on page 8. As a part of the Planning Department transportation projects. And the reason I think it's important to put this back in fiscal year 2030 is a recognition that we have not updated any of the cost projections, any of the planning documents. If funding became available as a part of infrastructure packages federally in next year, the coming year, we would not have current data or current documents. And I think we should, because this is a critical safety project. If you are anywhere on Expo Drive around fair time, concert time, any major event at the Metro, there is serious danger there with people trying to cross that intersection. This is not just beautification, it's a safety project. I think we need to keep it in that fiscal year 2030 as a part of the planning documents. So I would propose that we amend this table, this top table here on page 8, to include in fiscal year 2030 $4 million for the Expo Drive Bridge project.
Second.
Okay, I heard second by Councilmember Neese. And not just on page 8, but wherever else it appears.
Correct.
But that we get the idea. Key thing being fiscal year 2030 and the dollar amount being $4 million.
Correct.
And it's been in the CIP in the past, so any of the details could come from...
Just restoring what was previously there.
From there.
Thank you, Mayor. Correct.
Good. Any further discussion on that one? If we put the turf field on Expo Drive, we could maybe kill two birds with one.
Anything in the Heights, Mayor, we are for.
Okay, well, that's not quite the Heights. Okay, any discussion on that before we proceed to vote? Okay, if in favor of the proposed amendment to add Expo Drive fiscal year 2030, $4 million, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And that one also passes. Back to discussion. Councilmember Bernice.
I have a question for Debbie. Hey, Debbie, does the CIP include the council's direction to include stormwater costs on that ramp-up scale? And what percentage increase is that going to be to residents? What's the expected increase to residents this coming year?
Yes, it does include the ramp up, and as far as the number, I'd have to go check.
Can you run just a quick guess?
I better go check.
Because we normally do what, 3 to 5%?
No, I think the ramp up period is higher than that, probably. Councilmember Gulick, I'm looking at you because I'm wondering if you remember it from those last. I was going to say 8, 10.
8 to 10, okay.
Yeah, I think it was higher.
All right, higher, thank you.
Okay, anything else before we proceed to a vote on the underlying motion? Okay, so I'm not going to repeat all the amendments. This is a motion to approve the CIP with the 4 amendments that have been approved. If in favor of the underlying motion as amended, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Voting in opposition, Councilmember Bernice. Other council members in favor. Therefore, the motion is approved. That concludes item number 4, our final item. Do we have any public comment on non-agenda items? Just a second, Jeff Scotta.
I apologize, Mayor and council members. I didn't realize we had a public comment on that. I thought you guys were discussing much stuff. I just want to thank you all very much. Jeff Murai, 2492 Aspen Way. Guys, in my opinion, this is a huge boost for Billings. This is going to be just like what the Metro was back in the 70s, guys. I've been in business for 35 years here. I've lived in this town for 45 years. I really think the economic drive that this is going to happen, not only from outside money coming into Billings, it's not going to recirculate the current money. We're going to bring in exterior money, but it's also going to bring in development within this. I know of 2 developers in town that waiting for your approval on this thing tonight that plan on doing some pretty big projects over in King Avenue. And they aren't going to do it unless this thing gets approved and the courts and the hockey get done, along with, along with the soccer field. That's number 1. Number 2, the other reason you made a great choice in doing this, quality of life. Folks, it's quality of life. This is going to be really good for the people that live here right now. This is going to be really good for people wanting to move into Billings. I mean, this is what they look for, is stuff like this. Hell, everybody has buildings and this and that. These are the things that they need to bring their families here to separate us from everybody else in the state. Thirdly is the crime. Guys, we haven't addressed that. I do think this is going to be a part of, not the solution, but a part of solving some of the crime that we have going on here. We need to have a place for 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids. Instead of being at home by themselves, they need a place to go. And I think this complex is going to do that. So again, I want to thank you all very much for approving this. I think you made a very good decision. And we will be very good stewards of this money. I will not let $1 over 20 million happen in this thing. We can build beautiful courts for 20 million bucks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Those comments are always in order. We appreciate it. Any other public comment on items not on our agenda?
Hi, I'm Christy Drake. Reside at 2950 Walden Place. And this is not an agenda item, but this was discussed about moving transportation alternative funds to Safe Routes to School projects. I do want to say that should that happen, then big trail projects wouldn't be able to happen. Transportation alternatives funds are what enable the city of Billings to complete larger projects like the Yellow Jacket Trail. I don't believe that there would be another way to make that trail happen. Billings TrailNet actually just responds to the public, where you don't have any investment, a personal investment in making trails happen, we are responding to the public, and that's something that we're responding to. I would like to see if we can get on the city council agenda and just make a presentation about what Billings TrailNet has found, the different projects that we are responding to. And so I do believe that the Safe Routes to School projects have been funded by Safe Streets for All, and we do support safe streets or safe routes to school wholeheartedly, but these bigger funds that are $1 million projects are simply not going to happen unless transportation alternatives dollars are put toward big projects like this. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any other public comment?
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Thank you. My name's Scott Hanser, 430 South Billings Boulevard. I again want to say thank you very much. This has been an 8-year battle to get to this point, and I'm just really grateful for your vote tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? No one is coming forward, so we will close the public comment period. Any council initiatives? Councilmember Kennedy.
Mayor, I don't know if this is the appropriate place, but I would request that we have an executive session of the council next Monday at 4:30 to discuss the PD investigation, and it would be the council and the city administrator. That would be it.
Okay, we'll take that up with the city administrator and legal to see if that's within the scope of executive session. Involves a personnel issue, so perhaps.
Gina, one of the questions I have, there's 3 council people that are requesting this, so we should be okay to go forward with an executive session, correct?
Councilmember Kennedy, I believe that your recollection is correct, excuse me, I'm trying to find the section, but I believe it's either the mayor or 3 council members who can request.
Yes.
Yes.
What are the 3 council members, just to be clear?
Okay, so we have at least that, so
thank you.
We'll have to look into the procedure, but the time would be roughly an hour before?
4:30.
At 4:30.
4:30 at the library.
Okay, or some other, okay, someplace where we can close it privately. Okay, we'll look at the procedure, and that's a request or whatever it is, it's made. Gina, is there any other formal action has to be taken on that, since it's not something I'm familiar with the procedural details of?
No, Mayor, I believe that the city administrator can just provide a proposed agenda. I can just include that in the agenda.
Okay, very good.
And I did let City Administrator Kirkowski know that I was going to request this evening.
Okay, thank you. Further, either on that issue or further initiatives, Councilmember? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Kenny?
I have an initiative.
Okay.
Just a heads up, like I've always said, I will tell you a week before I bring the initiative to you. The initiative will be to eliminate car allowances and go back to mileage for all employees of the city. So I will have that out to you this week so we can discuss it next Monday. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just had a question for City Administrator Dahl. Based on, City Attorney, sorry, City Attorney Dahl. Based on just the discussion here, do you think an executive session, the subject matter fits within what would an executive session would be allowed for? Thank you.
Councilmember Joy, Mayor and Council, I am not sure that there's going to be any information to share, but I think that we can we can discuss that internally and I guess share that information, or if there's not sufficient information to share by next Monday, then I would think that Chris will reach out and provide that explanation to council.
Follow-up.
Okay, Councilor Joy?
Thank you. Just to follow up, I would also like you to think about what is the appropriate role of council in what may be an internal investigation and an external investigation, so that I'm clear and council is clear where our lanes are, because this could be an area where there could be some maybe inappropriate influence. Thank you.
I'm sure our city attorney will be looking at all those issues, what the scope of that discussion should be. Very good. I think we are ready to adjourn. Thank you, everyone. Good night.